Hello, you're listening to Coaster-852.
A Hong Kong podcast about all things coasters and theme parks. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Coaster-852 with my lovely co-host HM. How are you doing?
As always, good as always.
Oh, good as always. Have you been sort of going out or not really? Just been staying indoors?
Although we are still in a lockdown in the UK, but it's warming up here, so I'm getting more walks almost daily. Pretty good. Lovely.
Yeah, it's such a British thing to talk about weathers all the time, ain't it? If you stay longer in the UK, you generally talk more about the weather.
Yeah, so there's a thing called the Scottish miserable weather, or with a stronger accent, the miserable weather. So we are talking about slightly foggy weather with a bit more than a rain shower. It is kind of the level of rain between having you in a dilemma thinking, should I get an umbrella or just a waterproof jacket? Well, I would say people don't really use umbrella in the UK because the wind is just too strong. So umbrellas are like single use only, just like your takeaway boxes.
Yeah, just basically if you use your umbrella, it's just one single use because pretty much your umbrella will be screwed in like no time. So there's not really a point in having an umbrella. And it's more practical raincoats, I think.
Every time, boom, it's done. Next time, boom, done. Bye-bye.
Well, I don't know what is it called, but there's a folktale story about the sun and wind or something like that, about like blowing off jacket. If it is in the UK, then I think the wind would definitely win, not the sun.
Yeah. All right, let's go back to roller coaster because this is not a weather podcast.
True. All right then. Without further ado, let's get back to talking about the park spotlight of this week. This week about Huis Ten Bosch. I have to polish up my Dutch accent there. So this week we are talking about Huis Ten Bosch. For you guys that are not really familiar with this park, it is actually a theme park located close to Nagasaki in Japan, and it is close to an area called Sasebo. But basically, it is like a park that not many enthusiasts talk about because there aren't any really exciting attractions or exciting roller coasters there. But what makes it is like I think the ambience of this park, because it is based around a royal city in Netherlands actually. Yeah, HM, do you want to talk about how could you like get to the park in terms of transport wise?
Well, there will be buses from the airport or possibly your hotel. You can always check, or just take the JR train.
Yeah, so when it comes to transport, Japan is quite convenient as always. But mainly, there's two ways that you could get to this park: by either bus or JR. So if it is by bus, you could either take it from the central Nagasaki station and change at Central Bridge, or you could go directly from the Nagasaki airport to Huis Ten Bosch. Or alternatively, you could actually get a train ride from Nagasaki station to Huis Ten Bosch. But also, for you guys visiting the area, I would really recommend just staying in like the surrounding area in Sasebo, because I know they have like aquariums and things like that. And also they have an absolutely delicious lemon steak.
Ooh, lovely.
Very mouth-watering, ain't it?
Well, don't forget about all the sushis and ramens you can get, like always when you go to Japan.
For sure. In Nagasaki, they have got a food called champon, and that's basically a sort of ramen noodle that is heavily influenced by Chinese culture. So it is really interesting. If you guys want to try that out, it is definitely interesting food to try out.
そうですね。面白い。美味しい。
Love it. For you guys that don't really understand Japanese, omoshiroi is interesting. It means interesting in Japanese. But in terms of the price of this park, it could really vary a lot from kids that only pay 3,500 yen, which is around 32 US dollars, or £23 to 7,000 yen, or $64 or £46 for entering the park. And I think that's probably the reason why not many people actually just specifically pay a visit to this park. Because when you look at how many attractions there really isn't much to do. It's more like ambience park than a theme park to visit with like loads of rides. And if you're looking at free rides, you could give a pass on this park. But what would you be like most interested about this park?
I'll be most interested in comparing the park with the actual site in the Netherlands, because I had been in the Netherlands and seeing all the windmills and flowers, tulips and stuff. It's absolutely amazing.
Oh yeah, ain't it? Like personally, I have previously, like last summer, I've planned to visit Amsterdam, but it never happened because we all know what happened then. So such a shame. But that being said, even as someone that have never been to the Netherlands, I have visited the park before, and I could tell you that my visit during summer was amazing. Like long time ago was really amazing because they have this flower show and they have many tulips and also windmills that really immerses you into the whole atmosphere of Netherlands itself. I think it really features like the best of the many parts of the Netherlands. Like they even have a royal palace replica. So I think it is a really cool park to walk around, and in my opinion is very underrated. Do you know, are the canals mainly at Amsterdam in like the real Netherlands?
Yeah, there are a lot of canals around in the city center of Amsterdam. I've been there and really, really love it. And also in the city center, it's also a great view when you see the trams crossing the canals. It will be a perfect place for any photographers here.
Yeah, it's so picturesque. And I think for anyone visiting this park, it will not be like much different because there are a lot of canals and high towers and townhouses around sort of different rivers and canals in the park. So it is a really picturesque park. Would you agree that this park actually looks like a real thing?
Yeah, I would say if you cover all the Japanese signs and stuff, I think you can't really tell between the Japanese version of the park and the actual thing, to be honest.
Oh wow, that's a big compliment from you for someone that has been to the Netherlands.
The last time when I was in Amsterdam, well, actually not quite Amsterdam, Schiphol Airport, was when I was changing flight when I was flying from the south of France back to the UK. I stopped there for an hour buying the caramel waffles. Ooh.
Oh, nice. Is it like Belgian waffles or like, I don't know?
I think so. Yeah, maybe. They are very sweet and, well, very tasty. And when we talk about Netherlands, how come we can forget about the flowers? In the airport, even they've got a store selling wooden handcraft flowers with different colors, tulips, and I think you guys can probably get one. It will be a really good souvenirs.
Oh wow. Are they actual like dried tulips or?
Oh, they are the wooden handcraft flowers painted with different colors. It's a wooden flower.
That's pretty cool because when I think of Poland, it is just like wooden shoes and things like that. Things that I could instantly think of. Maybe a stereotypical feel. But also you could get this in Huis Ten Bosch in this theme park. So I would say it's pretty authentic, ain't it?
Yeah, agreed.
And but for you guys that are looking for more thrilling stuff, there are actually other stuffs to do as well. So not only walkthroughs and museums and things like that, but there's also a storm simulations, which is actually really good. For you guys that have been to Universal Parks, it would be similar to something like a backdraft show, or if you have been to Hollywood studios in Paris, then it's kind of similar to maybe studio tour in Hollywood studios in Paris. So it's really cool. Like they have really cool fire effects and things like that. And it's surely an attraction that you wouldn't want to miss. They also have a garden area with some zip lines and even a credit for you credit holders out there. So there's even an inverted mountain or alpine coaster that I don't think many people would have experienced it. So it is definitely something to look forward as an enthusiast. But in terms of visiting other places, what would you do if you are visiting? Would you plan this along with other cities as well in Kyushu, or what would you do?
You mean what to do in Kyushu?
Yeah, like, do you think it's just worth it to just go to the park alone?
Haha, I've been to Kyushu in 2018. It was a lovely place. I would say it can be part of your trip in Kyushu, but you should definitely go and check out the other cities like Fukuoka, Oita, Kagashima, and Saga.
Oh, yeah, and don't forget that Beppu is also quite a good place to go to. Beppu with the hot springs, and it's really relaxing, and you could get some really authentic hot springs hotels up there. So don't forget to hit that up too.
It is a must in Japan.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, it's part of the authentic experience. And also, if hot springs don't convince you enough, then roller coasters would. Because I know there's a park nearby that has the wooden coaster, Jupiter, which is pretty cool. So for you credit holders out there, this would definitely be something that you would want to bear in mind when planning out the trip. Yeah, it's actually still running in Beppu, the Jupiter roller coaster, and for you guys like El Toro out there, I think you guys probably should definitely hit up Kijima Kogen as well if you are planning a trip to Kyushu. In terms of accommodations, what do you think if you are visiting this park? Will you stay in Nagasaki or would you stay in Sasebo?
I would say Nagasaki in this case because it's the main city around. Definitely go and check that out. I've never been to that part of Kyushu, but it's always in my bucket list.
Yeah, honestly, it's brilliant because of how many islands there are. It's a very coastal region and the sea is beautiful. On a sunny day, you could get a cruise out there and have a look at the different islands that are uninhabited, and it's truly an amazing experience. But even though if you're not visiting Huis Ten Bosch yourself, but just visiting the surrounding area, definitely worth it. But yeah, that's pretty much it about the park this week, and let's move on to our next section where we discuss about the question that every enthusiast wants to answer but nobody asked for. So let's discuss what is a credit anyways. So for you guys that are not seasoned enthusiasts, I thought I would briefly introduce what coaster enthusiasts consider as a credit. So for coaster enthusiasts, they often call the roller coasters that they have ridden a credit. So, say if they have been on a roller coaster before and ridden it once, then they would count that as one credit. But if you repeatedly ride the same roller coaster, that doesn't count as more than one credit. It still counts as one credit. But then I heard you might ask, why is it so interesting? Well, it's because as much as it sounds quite one dimensional and it seems like the definition is clear cut, it's not. Because sometimes some people consider flat rides, dark rides, or even water rides sometimes, occasionally, as roller coasters. But for me, I would definitely say that they are not roller coasters because many other people like non-seasoned enthusiasts would don't really see the distinction, like regular park goers don't really consider like the distinction between flat rides and roller coasters, for example. But I think for us to understand what a credit is, I think it's easiest to see a definition of a roller coaster. Let's get back to the basics. Do you want to read out how Cambridge Dictionary defines a roller coaster?
Oh yeah, of course. So for a roller coaster, a sport railroad established in an amusement park with open cars that travel quickly along a steep, curved track that goes up and down and over by Cambridge Dictionary.
Wow.
British accent.
It was almost so good, you know. It was almost so good that I thought you were a narrator in his natural habit. Yeah, you should be the next David Attenborough. But anyways, that's getting a bit into the natural history part of things that as coaster enthusiasts, why would you discuss anyways? So I think this definition is pretty fake, ain't it? Do you not think that this definition doesn't cover what essence of a roller coaster is?
Yeah, although I do not know many of the names of the rides or the characteristics and features of many rides, but definitely I would think that there will be, prototypes or a special case for a really, really special ride around the world. Just like buses, we've got different, different models, different prototypes or variations and stuff. just the same.
Yeah. It's definitely not a clear-cut case on saying yes, this is a coaster or no, because there's much more to consider as we move on to see more cases that it could be debatable. Like sometimes some people consider something as a coaster, but some as not. But like when I talk about this, I think it's better if we sort of fit in different examples, and I would see whether we consider a ride a roller coaster or not, because there are different types of rides. So I would think about trying to put on some photos of those rides, so you guys could decide on yourself that whether it is a roller coaster or not. But our discussion will be mainly based around using different photos as a prompt, I suppose. But the easiest way to identify whether something is a roller coaster or not is through a website called rcdb.com, which is a roller coaster database that has pretty much like you could search by manufacturer or by the model of the ride and things like that. So I think that is very useful for some non-coaster enthusiasts or for someone that is just getting into coasters. Have you had a look at rcdb.com actually?
Well, I'm only a GP, so how come I would see that website before?
Well, I think it's pretty easy to navigate. So I mean, even someone that is not a seasoned enthusiast could actually enjoy it, I think.
Yeah, probably check that out later on. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, but you guys want to check it out yourself, there's actually a guide on my Instagram page. It's actually one of my first posts. So if you guys are interested, definitely you could find the posts on my Instagram page, which I would attach on the description below. So yeah, but I think based on the Cambridge Dictionary definition, we could say that it is really fake and it doesn't really tell you anything. So for me personally, I consider that if a ride is powered by gravity for the majority of its course, then I would consider it as a roller coaster. So in this case, water coaster with a roller coaster S track section. So not just the main drop. I would actually consider that as a roller coaster. Do you agree?
For this water coaster, I can see that obviously for the incline, it will have to be carried with a chain, isn't it?
Yeah, chain.
After that, the decline will be driven by gravity, and it will just glide on the twisty track, and finally it ends up in a pool of water. Well, I think it should be considered as a coaster because it's driven by gravity, and if we refer back to the Cambridge Dictionary, well, we have got railroad here. We have got the steep curved track, and well, it's not included in the dictionary definition, but here, when we talk about either considering it as a roller coaster or not, we are looking at the point about gravity here. So for water coaster, it is a tick.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. But what if there's just a roller coaster? It is just a drop. Would you consider it just like one drop? Would you still consider it as a roller coaster?
In this case, well, there will be a debate because for a single drop of a water coaster thingy, well, it can either be, if you imagine a giant slide for kids, it's basically sized for that coaster seated with passengers be, just sliding down a slope and splash into the water like whoosh. And in this case, I do not really think it is a long enough ride considered to be a roller coaster. Well, if a single drop be considered as a roller coaster, then a sliding down slide be a roller coaster. No.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. That comes to like later part of our discussions where I just think people take it too far for what they consider as a coaster, because some even consider other types of ride, which is pretty much a slide, that is a roller coaster. But we'll not talk about that a bit like too much until we get to there. So let's move on to like other water rides. So shoot the shoot rides or rapids, I think for me it's definitely a not, because they don't really follow a track pattern. It's more like they follow a trough rather than a track. So I think it is clearly a no for me for those rides. What do you think?
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next one.
But I mean, powered coaster is really debatable, because some argue that it really isn't a cred because some consider that it maintains a constant speed throughout the ride based on just using electric motors. And some argue that it is not really a coaster to say in such an occasion because they said that even drops are controlled. So how come this would be considered a roller coaster? But for me, I think I consider them as a roller coaster because when part of the track is controlled by gravity, I think you could consider it as a roller coaster. Do you think that it could be considered as a coaster, or is it just too much of a stretch to say it is a coaster?
Yeah, again, debatable. For power coasters, then I can relate that to train. We call a train roller coaster. No, for some mountain trains, maybe. They've got really twisty tracks. Then do you count that as a roller coaster? It's not really a ride. It's a way of commuting.
Yeah, I mean, it comes to talking about the history of roller coasters itself because at the start of the time, the inspiration about roller coasters was actually transportation rides. So, transport called gravity mountains, I believe. So, they used those sort of like they put a train cart on a track itself and they send like coal downhill. So, I think that's like maybe what we considered as roller coaster nowadays that based on that fact that we established that roller coasters travel on track and they travel downhill. But in this case, it's really up for debate whether the train is actually fully under the control of gravity after maybe a chain lift or launch or whatever it is. And in this case, it's debatable, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
All right, guys, this is the end of part one, and
Stay tuned for part 2 coming up tomorrow. Bye bye.